How's it going out there? Welcome to Stock Talk with Mike. Today we got some really exciting news out of Cathie Wood and the ARK Invest team. They just filed a preliminary prospectus with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, for the release of a 6 actively managed ETF, and it's going to be for space exploration companies and the companies that surround that industry. And it's going to trade under the ticker ARKX. So I'm going to talk about some of the companies that I think could potentially be included in that fund and look at their prospectus and tease out why certain companies might be included and what it might mean for those companies. So if any of you know about ARK Invest, you know why this is such a big deal. Cathie Wood, the CEO, has gained nearly celebrity-like status over this past year or so. One is their really bullish call on Tesla. They had a $7,000 price target on Tesla. Split adjusted, that'd be $2,300 today. And that has really paid off. In their largest fund, their ARK Innovation Fund, they actually had about a 10% weighting in Tesla. And they have a heavy weighting in Tesla and some of the other funds as well. And that's really paid off for them. That fund, the Innovation Fund, had over 170% return in 2020. So they went from a small niche ETF player managing about $3 billion in assets just about a year ago to where today they have over $40 billion in assets under their management. So when ARK Invest buys a company, investors pay attention. It's sort of that stamp of approval, and I think gives investors that conviction that it's a good company to invest in. So a lot of people follow what ARK Invest is doing. So the creation of this space fund really is going to be game-changing for, I think, some of these space companies in the industry. So this is their prospectus filing with the SEC. It's a long document, a lot of dry material in here, but there's one paragraph of particular interest, I think, for investors under principal investment strategies. And it relates to the type of companies that they plan to hold in the fund. And I'm going to read that out here. So the fund will include orbital aerospace companies, which are companies that launch, make, service, or operate platforms in the orbital space, including satellites and launch vehicles. Suborbital aerospace companies are companies that launch, make, service, or operate platforms in the suborbital space, including drones, air taxis, and electric aviation vehicles. Enabling technologies companies are companies that create the technologies required for successful value-add aerospace operations, including artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, materials, and energy storage. Aerospace beneficiary companies are companies that stand to benefit from aerospace activities, including agriculture, internet access, global positioning systems, so GPS, construction, and imaging. So really, there's some obviously pure play space companies that would fall under exploration and whatnot, but really it's quite a broad suite of companies. And I think there's a lot of companies in a bunch of their other funds that would be obvious players in here as well. Two of my favorite pure plays, one of them I'm a shareholder of, and that is Galactic. I think is a great speculative play that I would like to see be successful, and I would like to see that space exploration come to fruition. So I'm really, I as a spectator, I want to see how that plays out. But really, some of these companies we're talking pre-revenue. But another company I like that's a pure play actually has revenues, and that's Maxar Technologies. And they're a satellite play. They also deal within, it's more some of the space hardware like communications and on-the-ground robotics and whatnot as well. So that's a very interesting company that I think would be an obvious new addition to this ARK ETF. And looking at some of their tickers, like you're looking at Virgin Galactic, which is ticker SPCE, after hours today, it went up 14%. So definitely, I think this is some buzz around this ETF that's being created. Companies like this that we're kind of waiting for news, right? It's not like we're waiting for a revolutionary Q3 of showing certain earnings per share or something like that. These companies are really going to be news driven when they're kind of really, for the most part, pre-revenue. So this is the type of news that gets people excited about. But definitely one of interest. Maxar Technologies also up almost 13% after hours today. So that's pretty interesting. There's also a couple other SPACs that are going to be merging in the very near future, but you can already buy the SPAC. One is Stable Road Acquisition Corp, SRAC, and that is the company that's going to be merging with Momentus. So the basically the space tug company, and so this is an interesting one, and it's up almost 22% after hours today. So definitely a sharp rise there. Another SPAC that's a space play, New Providence Acquisition Corp, ticker NPA. They are bringing through the merger public, AST Space Mobile. So AST Space Mobile deals with mobile wireless network in space. So that's an interesting play as well, I think. But again, like no significant operations today. So basically totally pre-revenue. So about as speculative as it gets. But I think these really speculative plays could be really interesting to see what happens to them if they get included in the fund. And being quite small companies, you could see quite a sharp spike in their share price. But I think they're just going to be really highly volatile up until then. And I think like there will be some obvious players that are in some of their in ARK's autonomous and robotics ETF, like Lockheed Martin, which is also in a bunch of other space ETFs that are out there, would be an obvious play. They mentioned drones. I think a great drone play, and actually a company I own, is Aeroviron. So ticker AVAV. Just a great company. Always got good revenues and revenue growth. And they actually have suborbital drones that they work with NASA on. So that's definitely one to watch as well. And then I think like there's going to be some of the obvious players like 3D printing. You can see a company like Nano Dimension in there. You're going to see AI companies. So I think your NVIDIA's, maybe Google, even Amazon in there as well. Probably others I'm missing. It'll be interesting to see if a company like Boeing makes it into there, which I think is also interesting play, just as a reopening play at this point, and just how beaten down they've been with the negative news cycle around the 737 MAX. There's still a company, like when it started to get close to $200 a share, I nibbled at it a little bit and bought some shares just as another hedge in my portfolio for the reopening trade. Is like trading at about 50% their all-time highs. I just see them being, as a company looking back 10 years from now, I don't see them being smaller than they were, 2 years ago. So I see them being much larger. So even 5 years from now. So I think you'll see that return eventually when travel starts again, and then those airlines are looking to purchase airplanes again. So that's an interesting play, and it'll be interesting. I don't know if it really aligns with ARK Invest's investment strategy or not, Boeing. So it'll be interesting to see if a company like that's included. But definitely a few of my favorites to keep on the radar there. Aerovironment, I should mention, is actually already in their autonomous ETF as well. So that's one they already hold. So if you're buying these thinking that the inclusion in this ETF for that infusion of dollars is going to cause this meteoric rise in the stock price, I don't know if that alone is going to be enough, because like a lot of these companies already in their other ETFs. Even Virgin Galactic is also held in some of their ETFs as well. So definitely some of those SPACs are interesting because they're not companies currently held by ARK Invest. So I think that's where you could see something really interesting happen when they purchase sort of a new company for them at least. So definitely an industry I'm going to be keeping a close eye on and seeing how this plays out. As I mentioned, this ETF, ARKX, is supposed to be publicly traded sometime around the beginning of April. So I'll be watching it closely. Very interesting. And that's pretty much all I have for you today. So thank you very much for watching. Happy investing.